It's draft day, Bills Mafia, and the rumors surrounding your Buffalo Bills are heating up as we get closer and closer to Brandon Beane and this Bills team being on the clock. We're going to get into all the last-minute draft rumor mill stuff that is leading up to the 2025 NFL Draft, plus the top 5 Bills draft targets at pick 30 if they stick and pick. But before we get into all of that, make sure you are subscribed to the channel for free Bills content all week long during this draft. Every time the Bills make a pick, we will make a video. We will get you draft grades. We will get you mock drafts for day 2 and day 3, bringing you all the Bills content you're going to want this weekend. So hit that big red sub button and turn your notifications on so you know whenever we post a video here at the Bills Breakdown. All right, so let's get into the Bills draft rumor mill here on the day of the big draft in Green Bay. So talking about round 1 evaluations here to start, because before we get into talking about any prospects or what Buffalo's going to prioritize in this draft early on, we got to talk about the draft as a whole. And it's not viewed around the league and around media as a stellar draft. I mean, you talk about Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter is really the only 2 blue chip prospects that people are talking about at the top of this draft. And then, it's kind of a crapshoot thereafter. Yeah, the top 10, a lot of names that are kind of consistently flying through there in mocks. But, after you get to 10, a lot of people think the rest of the picks that are going to be made in the first round are actually more of day 2 level of talent. And that begs the question, what does Buffalo think of this draft, and how many first-round talents do they believe that there are in this season? Well, Tony Pauline of Sportskeeda had a little bit of insight as to what Buffalo is looking at. They said there's been a lot of talk over how weak the first round of this year's draft is, and I'm told the Buffalo Bills have just 12 players graded as true first-round prospects. In the end, this means players taken in the bottom half of the initial frame are second-round talents, and that's interesting because Buffalo's picking at 30. So, odds are that whoever falls to them at 30th overall would be considered by them a second-round talent. But I do believe the Bills are in a good position to move around in this draft, whether or not they want to move up in round 1 or they want to move out of round 1 completely, maybe pick up a third-round pick in their arsenal. They do have 10 selections right now. We'll show you all of them in just a moment. But they're in a good spot because there could be a first-round talent they believe on their board in their top 12 that ends up falling all the way to 30. And a player that has been mocked by Peter Schrager, among others, over the last few days is Malachi Starks out of Georgia. So this is a player who, if Buffalo gets lucky enough for him to fall at 30, yes, safety is not the most sought-after position early on in drafts, but Buffalo definitely has a need, and they are, not as deep as some people think in their safety room. So Malachi Starks is a guy who's talked about as a leader, started multiple seasons at Georgia, and is a true ball hawk and real scanner of the football field on that back level, could play that free safety spot right away for the Bills. Then if this is a player that ends up falling all the way to 30, then Buffalo could be in line to select him, as he's viewed across the board really as a top first-round talent, no doubt about it. Then moving on to what the Bills could do in this first round. What about trading up? And I talked about this a couple of times throughout this pre-draft process, but trading up for a corner in this draft would be the idea that I would have for Buffalo, because there are a couple of CBs that are going to be selected before 30, and if Buffalo's zoning in on picking a corner with their first selection in this draft, somebody who can go start alongside Christian Benford on the outside, then they might have to go up and select one by trading up. And I think, there's no doubt, if I make a guarantee between the first 2 days of this NFL draft, where the Bills have 3 selections at this point, a corner will be selected within the first 3 picks. Somebody who they believe can end up starting at their CB2 spot alongside Christian Benford. But let's take a look at the Bills draft picks at this point, because they have 10. And they have a good opportunity here to be able to move up. And if you want to move up 10 or so picks in that first round, then you know what? They have a good arsenal of second-round picks to be able to do so at 56 and 62. And then 2 picks in round 4, 109 and 132 could be used to move up, and maybe round 2 potentially. Round 5, they have 3 picks at 169, 170, and 173. And now, you couldn't in years prior, but you can trade comp picks now. So just more of an arsenal for Buffalo there on day 3. And then round 6, they round things out with picks at 177 and 206. And my philosophy is this with Buffalo trading up. If one of your top 12 falls past 20, then trade up and go get them. Because there's probably a good chance that there are teams that are around you in the late 20s that have similar needs to you, and they're probably going to select one of those top 12 players that are slipping toward the end of the first round. So if one of your top 12 falls past pick 20, trade up, in my opinion. Charles Robinson thinks there's a good possibility of this as well, of Yahoo Sports. He said, I think 3 franchises have some realistic buzz around them when it comes to trading on the clock. Now, he mentioned the Steelers and the Broncos, but he also said the Buffalo Bills moving up from 30th overall if a cornerback they like starts to come down the board and get in their range. Who could those corners be? The Bills have a couple of cornerback draft targets that I have for them, in the first round or two. Jahdae Barron, Will Johnson. Keep in mind, these are the 2 names that are likely going to have to be traded up for. You could argue a guy like Maxwell Hairston could be selected by a Green Bay or somebody in the mid to late 20s as well if Buffalo wants to move up a couple of spots if they really like him. But Trey Amos, Siobhan Revel Jr., Revel could be a second-round pick. Trey Amos could even be a second-round pick. Or they could stick and pick one of those guys at 30. I wouldn't have a problem with it. But Barron or Johnson would be guys that you actually have to think about trading up for if the opportunity presents itself. Robinson said this as well. He said if Texas corner Jahdae Barron gets to the 21st pick in the draft, I could absolutely see the Bills calling and inquiring about moving to 21 from 30. So exactly what I just said. If somebody who's top 12 on your board gets past pick 20, then go trade up and make it happen because Jahdae Barron could plug and play anywhere in Buffalo's secondary immediately. He's the best zone corner in this draft, but he's also a player who can play in the nickel and at the safety spot. You can move him everywhere. Super versatile. Another guy who's viewed as a leader on that Texas defense. I would love Jahdae Barron is my number 1 player that I would be happiest if the Bills leave this draft with. If they've had the opportunity and he slips past pick 20 and Buffalo doesn't trade up, I won't be the happiest camper after round 1. All right, last up on the Bills draft rumor mill here before we get into the top 5 prospects real quick. Defensive line. Is it a priority in this draft? I'd say so, but it doesn't seem like it's the biggest priority for round 1 for Buffalo, in my opinion. Now, they have had this glaring need at the true one-tech spot on that D-line for what feels like half a decade now. They haven't had a true run stopper in quite some time, and they've hosted a plethora of D tackles on pre-draft visits to be able to address that need, like Tyleik Williams, who some people have Buffalo being mocked at 30. Some people have him being mocked all the way at 56 for Buffalo. So a lot of versatility there. He could be a day 1 or 2 prospect. And then the rest of the guys that they've brought in, Deion Walker, TJ Sanders, Ty Robinson, and Omar Norman Lott, all day 2 talents. So like corner, expect a D tackle or somebody on the defensive line to be selected in the first 3 picks in Buffalo's selections this year. Ryan Talbot of Syracuse.com also said this. He said, look for a defensive tackle to come off the board early, but a double dip at the position is also a possibility. That's music to my ears because Buffalo needs reinforcements on the defensive line. They have players who are being suspended. Larry Ogunjobi, Michael Hecht, they're not going to be on the football field for the first 6 games of Buffalo's season. How quickly will they get adjusted to being back on the field midway through the year? And then Joey Bosa, who's on a 1-year contract, injury concerns around him. DeQuan Jones, we don't want him starting 17 games at that D tackle 2 spot. And if Buffalo's going to run a 4-man front, they're going to have to address D tackle on day 1. But like I mentioned with Joey Bosa and Hecht, like the Bills, they got spots where they need to address the edge rusher spot too. Like they need depth at that position as well. And they've brought in a bunch of early draft prospects at those spots. Shamar Stewart, day 1 prospect. It's definitely the biggest name on this board, the athletic freak out of A&M. But then his cohort, Nick Scourton as well. Braden Swinson out of LSU. Olufemi Oladejo is another player that could be on the board. And then Baron Sorrell out of Texas is just, these are guys who Buffalo's brought in for the edge. And they're all day 2 or day 1 prospects. This is a position group that I believe that Buffalo is going to address early on in this draft as well. Could be even another spot where Buffalo sees an edge that they like and they want to end up moving up in round 2 for one of these guys who they've hosted on pre-draft visits. But what is your number 1 priority for the Buffalo Bills this NFL draft? Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section. It could be corner, it could be D tackle, it could be trading up for one of the blue chip prospects or playmakers in round number 1. Let me know what your number 1 priority is for Buffalo in 2025. Now let's move into the top 5 draft targets for Buffalo at pick 30. If they were to stick and pick, I do think that Buffalo is going to move around in this draft quite frequently, but I do think that sticking and picking is definitely a possibility. You got to get another team to agree to trade up with you. So here are 5 players, just quick hitters, that I think Buffalo should look at 30th overall. If he's there, Kenneth Grant, get him on the team. This is the one-tech defensive tackle who I really think could shine for Buffalo. I mean, he's got the size, he's got the production, he's got the national championship pedigree, And this is a player who's not exactly linked to Buffalo at this point. He's not held on a pre-draft visit. Maybe they think he's a player that's going to go off the board before they get on the clock at 30. But, man, I love the prestige, and I love the physicality that he plays with. Is a dual threat as well, stopping the run, and can get to the quarterback. I love Kenneth Grant. Would love if he came to Buffalo at 30. What about Trey Amos, my guy who I've been beating the drum of this whole pre-draft process? In my opinion, the best zone corner that will be available for Buffalo at 30. I love the fit with Trey Amos and the versatility that he brings. Good blend of size and speed at that outside cornerback spot. And if you know what, he's on the board at 30, and all 5 of these guys are on there, I would not be mad if Buffalo went Amos over any of the names that we're talking about on today's show. I think he's pro-ready. I think he can start day 1, and I'd be very happy if he came off the board to the Bills at 30. What about Derek Harmon, the D tackle out of Oregon? Another big body at the middle of that defensive line. And he's got elite size at 6'4", 315. Like, he's a dog, and he can get to the quarterback as well. 5 sacks in 2024. Like, another true leader on Oregon's defense. The D tackle situation is so weird because we don't know who's going to go where. Walter Nolan's being mocked all the way in the top 10 at this point. Is Kenneth Grant and Derek Harmon going to be off the board before Buffalo gets to 30? If he ends up falling there, wouldn't be mad if he was a Buffalo Bill as well. And then I'll bring in Malachi Starks again, the DB versatile player out of Georgia. And we talked about him already on the show, but he's got good size of 6'1". He's able to move around on defense and be that backline protective layer in the secondary. I don't want DeMar Hamlin starting 17 games personally, but if Buffalo doesn't feel like safety is a huge priority early on in the draft, then I'm not too mad at it. I think he's a really, really good football player, though, and that's what I want to bring to the Bills. And then last up, another corner, Maxwell Harrison, the combine darling. Could he be a Buffalo Bill at 30? I would not be mad either. He's getting mocked in the mid-20s right now, and he's a guy who's just a blazing speed. 4.3 speed at that outside cornerback spot, can play man, can play zone, and has the ability to start right away. He had 5 interceptions back in 2023, 11 PBUs, and he faced some injury in 2024, but I do believe he's going to be a stud in the NFL, real raw athlete, and has the ability to track down any receiver down the sideline. But who is your guy? I just gave you my top 5 names that I would like to see the Bills draft at 30. I think it's going to be one of those guys, but who knows? If we know anything about Brandon Beane and company, we know that they kind of go against the grain when it comes to all the consensus mock drafts and all that stuff. Who's your guy? Who do you want the Bills to draft in round 1? Let me know in the comments. And make sure you are subscribed to the channel. We'll be bringing you Bills content all week, all weekend long. It does not stop here at the Bills Breakdown. So lock us in as your number 1 spot for Bills content. We'll see you guys on the next one when Buffalo picks at 30th overall or before or after. We'll see you guys then. And as always, go Bills.